Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Health Made Simple Show. I'm your host, Dr. Bart, and today we're going to dive into a topic that, quite frankly, has been brought to my attention very frequently recently on Instagram and social media, specifically the topic about H1 and H2 blockers, things like Pepcid specifically and Allegra, in their use or their application toward things like histamine and mast cell activation syndrome. So today I'm going to do a deep dive into this and give us an understanding of the benefits of doing this, but also the problems that are arising very quickly, and kind of give us an open perspective of, although we do see things on Instagram and people tout up and down how good they are, oftentimes I question whether or not they're in practice or if they just had a personal experience over a short period of time. And I will tell you that my guess is it is the latter, that often people have an experience with something and they're really excited about it, and therefore they go out and promote it, or they hear something on Instagram or any of the platforms for that matter, and they run out and then they try it and they get a little quick fix, and then they start promoting it as if this was the miracle cure for everything. And folks, it's not always the case, and you know that. That's why you're listening to podcasts like this. Once again, thank you for being here at the Health Made Simple Show. Appreciate what you guys are doing, sharing it out, spreading a good word here. Keep doing the thing. We're starting to reach more people. That's the whole goal here. So let's dive in here a little bit, and let's just get right to it and talk about what is an H1 and an H2 blocker. So an H1 blocker is something like Allegra. Allegra is an over-the-counter medication, and this is often used to help downregulate or block the receptor site, block the histamine from getting into areas that may cause allergies, like itchy skin or watery eyes, or inside the mucosal glands, like inside of our nose. So H1 blockers, think of allergy medications. They do not stop histamine being produced at the mast cell level. They block it from being received. And so think of it this way: the baseball pitcher throws the ball. That is, the baseball pitcher is the mast cell. It throws the ball, which is histamine. And on the other side, you need a receptor. That's the baseball glove. And that's where it's being blocked. It's like they put a brick in there and it blocks it. So it suppresses the ability, or that particular part of the body. In this scenario, it's often skin, or these receptors in the nose or in the skin or in the eyes. So we don't have the symptoms of allergies. So that's an H1 blocker. An H2 blocker is something that inhibits your body's ability to make stomach acid. And right away, if you've been listening to the Health Made Simple podcast, before, you know that I am not an advocate of doing that. We have to have a really good reason if we're going to inhibit stomach acid, because we know that stomach acid plays a much bigger role than just having a little reflux every now and then. It plays a huge role in our immune system. It helps balance out the gut, prevents things like bacterial overgrowth, kills off parasites. It's a big player for us. So if we inhibit this to gain some other symptoms, some symptom relief somewhere else, we better know what we're getting into. And that's why I'm bringing this topic here to light today. So with that being said, that's those two things. That's what Pepcid is, and an H2 blocker. It inhibits the body from making acid, for making acid. And there's a lot of other ones out there as well. So think of all the antacids, all the proton pump inhibitors. We're going to throw them into that category. And specifically what we're seeing on Instagram right now, or probably Facebook and all the different social media platforms, is the combination of Pepcid and Allegra. And when we put these two together, people get these wonderful responses. It downregulates the amount of histamine that the body's dealing with. And no doubt about it, short term, some people are getting some really good, symptom relief, which I think is fantastic. And again, I'm not anti-medication. I am pro-body, pro-health, you name it when it comes to the human physiology, making good decisions today that are going to help us tomorrow. So every time we do something with our health, it is an investment. So I'm also, pro you guys investing in long-term future of your finances. So this is no different. We have to be very careful in seeking short-term pleasure on a regular basis, or what we want to call comfort. If you're always seeking comfort on the short term, there's a very good likelihood that on the long term, you're going to have some pain, because we're not always going to be comfortable. Sometimes we just have to deal with things and get to the root causes and fix them up. So that's the road we're going to navigate here today. So that kind of covers, that's what an H1 and H2 are. One inhibits the hydrochloric acid production, and the other one inhibits, it blocks the histamine from getting into the cells, especially the ones that create us these allergies, like our sinuses and our eye, itchy eyes and watery nose and all that kind of stuff. All right. So Do they work? Yes, they do. They can suppress in the short term. So the people out there claiming it, I don't believe they're lying. I believe that they're telling their experience that they're having a really good time suppressing these symptoms. And folks, that's what drugs do. Several years ago, probably a decade plus ago, I was dealing with some gnarly shoulder pain, doing everything under the sun. I think, at the time, actually, I probably wasn't doing that much at all. And I remember having some medications, some pain medications from a good buddy of mine who's a medical doctor. And he said, Bart, don't be silly. Just take a couple of these, get a couple good nights rest. And at that point, I decided I'd do it. And sure enough, I got a good night's rest. Yet, that wasn't the end of it. One, I quickly realized it felt so good, I wanted more of it. I knew better, though, than to keep taking them, because that feeling good wasn't, it wasn't doing my shoulder any good. It wasn't healing anything. I was just feeling good, but nothing was getting better with my shoulder. I can almost argue that my shoulder was going to get worse, because if it felt good, I was going to use it again. And that's the last thing that my shoulder needed at the time. I also noticed that the medications, the drugs, the pain relievers, I don't even know what kind I was on. I know it sounds insane, but there was just one of those moments, and there's probably, 10, 15 plus years ago, at least that. And then, and in that moment, I remember in the morning, my stomach was always bothering me. I felt nauseous all day, and I felt like I was kind of like hung over. So it had other side effects that weren't necessarily just about pain and not pain. And that's a big thing to, for us to always consider. Anytime you're going to put something in your body to eliminate a symptom, to downregulate the way that your body's trying to talk to you, I promise you, it is going to have side effects. That's why they're called medications. That's why they're drugs. And so as a result of those side effects, that's when we have to start thinking the big picture. And the big challenge here is that a lot of people, frankly, have a hard time correlating their side effects. They'll have their pain medication and don't think it has anything to do with their gut the next day. They think it's something that they ate. With that being said, let me move on here. So there's an issue with long-term use here. And I want to dive into this. This is the part I want you to understand, because I think this is also going to help us all learn a little bit about our bodies. So we'll take one at a time here. Let's just take the H2 blocker, the hydrochloric acid. Stomach acid in your body right now. And this is why it's a big challenge when I hear people taking antacids and they have a little bit of reflux, or a little bit of heartburn, or whatever the symptom might be, and then they go, oh, no big deal, just take a little Pepsid, or just take a little bit of an antacid, a proton pump inhibitor. And yes, you may suppress the symptoms, but here's the catch. Your body needs this acid, needs a very, very low level of acid, meaning that somewhere between like 0.01 or 0.1 to maybe 2.5 to 2. Or maybe 3.0, in that range, which is considered very acidic. You need very strong stomach acid to do the following: to be able to break down and absorb things like magnesium, calcium, iron, B12. So just think of those right now. If you go on a proton pump inhibitor, if you go on an antacid like Pepsid, I know it seems very innocent, no big deal, but my allergies are so bad, or my histamine, or it's giving me brain fog, I'm having all these hives and whatever it may be, and you decide you're doing that, now you are inhibiting your ability to absorb those. You might think, no big deal, I'll just get a little more calcium in my diet, I'll take a little more magnesium tonight. How about B12, folks? If you inhibit the ability for you to get B12 into your body, which means very, 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 very strong, low levels of acid, very strong acid, in order to do that. And now you need B12. It's like the powerhouse. It is like the main nutrient for your mitochondria. And mitochondria, as we know, is the powerhouse of the cell. That is what gives us energy in our lives. So by taking an antacid, something like Pepsid, you're inhibiting your mitochondria to function. Short term, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. Do it 1 or 2 days here and there. But the challenge is that's not what I'm seeing clinically, and that's what a lot of people are not. That's not what we're seeing out there in the real world. Because we do not correct the root cause, you got to continue to take the medications. You got to continue to suppress the histamine. You got to continue to suppress this acid. And so what do we see? We start to see people suppress those symptoms, yes, but then we start to see other challenges. In the long-term effect of being deficient in things like B12, they don't show up right away. We're talking about the impact of reducing the ability for your mitochondria to function better. That's what shows up as the aging process. This doesn't show up next week at the soccer match. This shows up over time and how well your body basically goes through life. So when we suppress anything, there's a good chance that we are going to run ourselves in a little bit of a quandary, especially when it comes to our everyday nutrients. And so anytime we reduce acid in our stomach, we then also, that's just nutrients. Now let's talk about some other things like our health, our stomach health, or our gut health. The acid in your stomach, first, it plays a massive role in our immune system. It's there as a gatekeeper. It's trying to do things like kill off bad bacteria, kill off parasites. That's one of its main features, main role. And if you reduce that acid, now the bad guys have an open gate to go right down into the small intestine. Once that bad bacteria gets there, and are we exposed to bad bacteria? All the time, folks. They're on our foods. We're exposed to them all the time. And as these bad guys that now have an open path, they have a free pass to go down into the intestines, get into the small intestine. That's when we start to see a bacterial overgrowth. Eventually, we see people that are on stomach acid, antacids, proton pump inhibitors for anywhere, I would say, past that 2, 4, 5 week, and they're not really recommended beyond that. When we see people on those medications for longer periods of time, there's definitely a correlation for those people that are practicing clinically. We see a correlation between antacid use and SIBO. And if you've ever dealt with SIBO, it's not an easy fix. Small intestine bacterial overgrowth is problematic. Energy, brain fog, weight gain, all of those things will happen once we can create that imbalance in your gut. And can it happen because we're simply just trying to reduce some of the symptoms that were associated with histamine? And unfortunately, folks, that's the answer. The answer is yes. And that's what's meant by side effects. And the Allegra, so let's go back to the H1 blocker, the Allegra. Anytime, and this goes across the board, we suppress action. This is where we get ourselves into a little trouble. So we see, I'll give you some examples first. If someone's on a statin, a cholesterol lowering medication, that's suppression. We suppress the ability for the body to make cholesterol. If that person comes off the cholesterol medications, it just doesn't come back up to its normal levels. It goes beyond it. It goes higher than it once was because we suppress it. It ends up going higher. And then hopefully it levels back out. And that's why clinically, when someone comes off it, I say, hey, listen, they might be working with me. They may think that I want them to come off the medications. Maybe we do or don't. But as soon as they come off, they're like, hey, doc, can we test? I say, no, we got to wait because we know once you suppress anything, it's going to go higher when you come off. And then let's take another example. Let's just say that, I don't know, no different. You take a basketball, stick it underneath the water. If you suppress it underneath the water, when you release your hands, it's going to go higher afterwards. So these are real issues that people don't think about when they go on medications. Once we suppress, what happens afterwards? We're seeing it right now with the GLPs. We're suppressing the desire to eat. People coming off the GLPs, what do? They have no idea how to deal with it. So it's going through the roof. They're actually eating more than they were before, because at least before they dealt with it. Now, here's the big thing about anytime we suppress. If you do not simultaneously take care of the habits and the lifestyles and correct all the deficiencies and correct anything that needs to be repaired, and you don't do that during that time you're suppressing, you're going to get yourself in a little bit of trouble. And we see that every day clinically. So I would suggest, just kind of like a fair warning, if you are suppressing, know that there's other options. And if you are suppressing and you're like, well, I'm good, I probably don't need to work that hard. Here's the thing, folks. When your body gives you really tough symptoms, maybe it's chronic allergies or chronic pain, or you're just dealing with a bunch of stuff, pay attention, pay close attention. Your body is not lying to you. There's something going on. And if all of a sudden you take a magic pill and you suppress it, you haven't healed it up, not even close. In fact, you've probably made it so it's going to scream even louder the moment you take that suppression away. And this is exactly what we see. You suppress the histamine long enough, you inhibit from the body from being able to receive it. It doesn't stop the mast cells. So listen real close, because I know that I'm going to get some pushback on this. No doubt people are going to say, well, I've had such success with it. I can't believe you're telling people not to take it. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm saying is be mindful here. If you suppress it, you are not doing anything on the level of the mast cell. So the histamine's coming from the mast cells. You are not doing anything to improve the way that your mast cells are functioning. So when we get back to root cause, this is where it gets really tricky. All you're doing is suppression downstream. And now the mast cells are going to keep pumping this stuff out, probably more, because you're going to back off your ability, your desire, and how hard you're working on what could be causing these things. You're going to get a little lackadaisical with your diet. You might get a little lackadaisical with the chemicals you're exposing yourself. You might get a little lackadaisical with the amount of stress you're being exposed to. And those are all big things when it comes to mast cell activation. So likely, if you're suppressing and you're not in a very specific sequential program of making sure that you're mapping out how to correct this mast cell activation syndrome or this histamine intolerance, you're probably going to be on these medications for a while. And then eventually, yes, the suppression stops. So with that being said, be mindful of that. And are there alternatives? Sure. And I'll throw a couple of those out for you, because that's what we like to do here at the Health Made Simple Show. We're not just going to say there's a problem with something without giving some level of solution. So there are some very good things. Now, I would recommend that if you're dealing with what you think is a histamine intolerance or a mast cell activation syndrome, that most likely you would benefit from getting with a practitioner. We'd love to work with you if you want to do that. If not me, there's a bunch of really good professional people out there. With that being said, if you are suppressing and now you're thinking to myself, man, I probably shouldn't be doing it this way, are there other tools? The answer is yes, there are. And they're very effective and they're very good. Do they work like drugs? No. There's a reason that drugs have side effects. They overwhelm the system, folks. So this is the challenge that I see in a lot of the TikTok and the Instagrams. They'll say, well, I tried this and I tried that and none of that worked. Folks, trying something for an evening and it doesn't fix everything in your life is not really a good shot at things. And listen, and if that's your parameters and saying, I need to take it right now, it needs to go away in 15, 20 minutes, then no, there's nothing about doing things naturally. You're not going to gain muscle that way. You're not going to lose weight that way. You're not going to develop a good relationship that way. You're not going to make a lot of money that way. You're going to have to keep, using drugs or whatever it may be. All right. With that being said, what are some options for you that could be very safe and effective to helping your body deal with this histamine response or these mast cell activation syndrome issues? And when I say mast cell activation, remember, mast cells are everywhere in the human body, in your skin, in your eyes, in your organs, are everywhere in the body. And if they become overwhelmed, they are part of your immune system. If they become overwhelmed and they become triggered more easily, they start pushing out inflammatory cells and inflammatory reactions. They start pushing out histamine. And that's when your body feels, unfortunately, that's when your body feels bad. Now, and this is a natural, I say it's a natural response. It's an overwhelmed system is really what it is. Your mast cells have become overwhelmed. And usually the root cause, not even usually, always the nervous system is involved in here. So nervous system dysregulation is always in there. And what else triggers it will vary for people. Almost always, 70 to 80% of the people, it is some type of a gut issue, whether it be leaky gut, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, something to do with your gut that has been going on for long periods of time, and you might not even notice them, but on a low level, there's a very good chance almost all our cases of MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, we almost always have to address the gut first. Always we have to address the nervous system. We have to figure out ways within the lifestyle. Sometimes this is hard, folks. It means you got to look around your life and say, something's got to change here. I might need to go to bed earlier. I might need to get a new job. I might need to figure out how to better communicate with the people in my life. You're going to have to figure things out so your stress isn't a big trigger for these mast cells. I also see a big deal with mold. If you've had prior mold exposure, and you have mold and you have biofilm that is not too healthy for you deep within the gut, those things have to be corrected. That is probably the biggest reason we see mast cell activation syndrome or these histamine intolerances. Two different things, but very similar in how we fix them up. The biggest things we typically see is going to be mold, some issues with your biofilm, which is that deep, deep layer inside your gut, and then nervous system dysregulation. So there are some things you can use. There's something called quercetin. Quercetin is fantastic. That works with your body and helps your body deal with the amount of histamine that's being produced. Then there's also things called like DAO, diamine. I'm going to mess it up there. And diamine oxidase. Am I saying that right? I'm listening. Diamine oxidase. Yeah, I guess I get it right. DAO is just what I call it. DAO, and that is what helps your body handle the histamine. Helps break down the histamine in foods can be very effective for you, especially if you think you have food triggers, which most of the time, again, because there's a gut component here, most of the time you do have a gut component here, which means a lot of foods, even healthy foods, could be triggering a histamine response. So quercetin, very effective. DAO can be very effective. I also use something called Antronex, which is a beef liver extract, which helps the liver drain a little bit more. That prepares and creates a situation where your liver doesn't have to release as much histamine back into the bloodstream. So there's a lot of good, very, very effective tools. Overall, I would say that there's a very, very important, very sequential way to managing MCAS or histamine intolerances. And I've walked us through here on the Health Made Simple podcast before, what I call the R4 system, where first we got to remove all the bad guys. This is so important. That not only means the foods that you're eating that could be triggering, but it also means the bad guys, meaning the bacteria and or the parasites that are living in your body right now, because those could be triggers by themselves. Then we have to go in and replace all the things that are missing. It means the vitamin C and the zinc and possibly the HCl, all the nutrients. We got to make sure we start to restore those guys. And then, of course, we got to repair what's been damaged. More often than not, there's a leaky gut component here. We have to restore the microbiome. And then last but not least, in the R4 component of this is where we have to rebalance the overall lifestyle. And this is more often than not the overlooked part. We think, well, I'm going to throw some supplements at this. I'm going to intermittent fast over here, or whatever it might be, and then I'm just going to ignore the fact that all the stressors in my life has anything to do with the overwhelming situation that my body's having right now. And I will tell you this: I've been practicing for 30 years, and I will tell you, every time someone is sick or unwell, there is a mental component here. There's a psychosomatic effect, meaning psycho the mind, soma the body, and the nervous system dysregulation that we see now is at a level that I've never seen it before. And I contribute many things. I think COVID started this. I think our lifestyles that we accept as normal every day, I include myself this, they are not normal. They are batshit crazy. We are on go, go, go all the time. And as a result of it, we are triggering these mast cells to release the histamine nonstop. And you might be one of the people out there that says, man, I do so many things right. I eat right. I do my red light therapy, and I got all these biohacks. You're doing all these things, and you're experiencing these different symptoms of histamine intolerances and mast cell activation syndrome. And oftentimes your key factor here is the fact that your nervous system is dysregulated. So with all that being said, folks, again, I'm not here to tell you that medications there's not a time and a place for them. I think they're probably not nearly needed as people are using them. I caution everyone for seeking comfort. Short-term pleasure almost always leads to long-term pain, and that applies when it comes to our health big time. So be very, very mindful of that. I will encourage you, if you're dealing with some of these things, you don't have to go down this road by yourself. Get with someone. We'd love to help. Myself and my team would love to help you through this journey. If you're dealing with mast cell activation syndrome, you're dealing with histamine intolerance, I'll make sure that there's some contact information in the comments below. That being said, keep taking deliberate action for your mind, your body, overall wellness. Y'all be awesome.